Greetings, shippers! With the continuation of the Kingsman series underfoot, it's time to take a look at a ship that was much requested upon the release of the first film, and is sure to recur with promises of more to come. However, while some dived into this pairing with ease, others had a much harder time, as there are aspects to this ship that made them rather uncomfortable. As always, here on Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy, we will examine as many sides as possible, as we dive into Hartwin, the pairing of Harry and Eggsy from Kingsman: The Secret Service. Kingsman: The Secret Service is an adaptation of the 2012 mini-comic series, The Secret Service. The name was later modified to make it simpler to find for fans of the film, for horizontal tie-in purposes. Like most adaptations of this particular author's work, it tends to be on the much looser side, and the darkness and anger present within most of his work is altered and replaced with a much more lighthearted tone. A tone that opts for an oft-times satirical take on the spy genre, particularly in film, with a special focus on the James Bond or Avengers series in terms of excess charm, ridiculous gadgets, over-the-top villains, shameful product placement, and at times vulgar sexuality. All of this for many combined into a fun romp that was a breath of fresh air after the infusion of hyper-realism into the genre that it still has not fully shaken off, as intense realism has yet to fully fade from being at least partially in style at the time of this recording. The film, of course, has its detractors, either people not fond of the style or who found that certain jokes went too far, particularly the final anal sex joke that some viewers found sexist. Your mileage will of course vary. For those who enjoyed the experience, and even some who did not, they came out of the film with a ship, a pairing of the main protagonists, Harry and his protege Eggsy. Now, the pros and cons for this ship are intriguing, as the very reason some people enjoy is also the reason others dislike it, based simply on a slight twist of perspective and wording. So let's take a look at the players. Harry Hart, played by the ever-charming and ever-handsome Colin Firth, is a top Kingsman agent. He's suave, poised, sophisticated, polite, basically all the things an extremely stereotypical English gentleman should be. He has impeccable taste, great fighting ability, and is authoritative with just a hint of caring beneath his professional veneer, which of course extends to his charge, Eggsy. Eggsy is the focus of the film's arc, from a budding hooligan going down the wrong path after losing his father at a young age, to a respectable, if still slightly cheeky agent by the film's completion, thanks in no small part to Harry's guidance. Harry's influence leads him to appreciate his own innate potential, realize his talents, and see a bigger picture outside of himself and the responsibilities that entails. These two share many scenes together, and a significant portion of the film focuses on their relationship, as it is portrayed in a surrogate father/surrogate son or mentor/mentee fashion. As both characters are largely idealized male archetypes, the reformed but not too reformed bad boy, and the gentleman whose skin you have to get beneath, it's hardly surprising that they have fans of themselves as individuals, and of course this being the shipping world of them together. Lots of the appeal for this ship comes from seeing the two slowly develop a genuine affection for each other, as Harry sees potential in Eggsy and makes attempts to bring it out and show him all he can be, believing in him before he even fully believes in himself. There is also a discipline element in this, which certain fans find appealing. More on that later. There is also Eggsy's genuine admiration for Harry as he comes to care for him and lets down his walls after having them up for so much of his life. The two mesh well together into a budding partnership that is cut down before it can fully blossom into what it obviously has the potential to be, which is always a great starting ground for fickers everywhere, namely the fix-it. Sometimes canon fixes it for you, but until that moment arrives, sometimes you have to fix it yourself. Another factor in this and many ships was the press tour and actor chemistry. Some ships can be greatly bolstered when it appears that the actors are playing into the pairing, be it wittingly or unwittingly. This addition of seeming actor support can bolster already excited fans, as was definitely the case here. So one of the core aspects of this pairing comes from the level of attachment one has to the partnership dynamic that plays itself out, largely as mentor/mentee, namely a wiser and usually, as is the case here, older mentor imparting wisdom, skills, in this case also fashion advice, and just a general character model to look up to a younger, eager, even if it is reluctant at first, protege, who finds themselves improved by the experience. As a result, you have a wide range of domestic-style fix, hurt comfort, and just slice-of-life scenes playing out in the ship, along with, of course, the fix-it. However, while the mentor/mentee ship has a long tradition, it has never been universally loved for a couple of reasons. One is the Svengali element, the idea of a person molding another into their ideal, what they think they should be, and then falling in love with the person of their own creation. It flies in the face of the people need to love you for you model, and the you don't have to change yourself for anybody but you models of love, as it seems that one person has far more agency in the relationship than the other. It can be argued that the transformation process works both ways, and the mentor figure finds themselves subtly changed or charmed by some of what were first perceived as flaws. However, the changes on them are minimal, and they still maintain a more dominant part in the relationship, which again, for some is not a problem, so long as the other party wants to be there and is happy with the changes that have been made. Others feel that any student/teacher-esque relationship should just stay away from romance, as they are two completely different dynamics that need not overlap, especially given some unfortunate real-world examples. In a pairing like this, the issue gets wrapped up in another issue that really bothers some fans, and that is age gaps. People get uncomfortable when the age gap is perceived, or even between different species with different rates of maturing. So when it comes to an explicit age gap like this one, many find it troublesome, or at least worthy of pause. Age gaps in real-world relationships have always been polarizing to some as is. The age is just a number versus maturity debate, and in a case of a gap this large, the questions of taking advantage and grooming come into play. Grooming in this context is defined as to prepare or train someone for a particular purpose or activity. The lines blur when that activity is sex or a relationship, as that can be a direct abuse of power, especially in a relationship where the age factors are so pronounced. There are some who feel that this pairing encourages and even romanticizes that type of behavior, promoting a fundamentally unhealthy relationship dynamic that in some people's estimation veers straight into abuse. Real-world grooming is 100% an issue and must be addressed. However, it is a stretch to imply that all fiction involving a large age gap is an attempt at normalizing such behavior, though for some, the potential unintentional ramification is enough. For fans of this ship, the argument can be made that the mentorship is in no way aimed towards a sexual goal, and that for most fics, the romantic element develops after and is a result of the two getting to know and trust one another more than the training. As well as for defenders of age gaps, they feel that an age gap does not automatically connote a difference in power, and that maturity and other factors can rise to create a level playing field. However, since Harry was also above him in the organization he was trying to get into, the power factor would still be in play even if he was older. And of course, there are those who will always point out life is life and fiction is fiction, and one wishes to read/write/depict does not necessarily have to be a reflection of truly held beliefs, but can instead be a fulfillment of fantasy, either specifically to these characters or of one's personal making. Just because one ships Hartwin doesn't even mean that other similar pairings have the same appeal. For many, pairings occur on a case-by-case basis, and simply happen with no deep examination of the socio-political ramifications, or even an intent to impact them. Instead, the intent is to create and share works with like-minded people. For those who feel that one should always be on guard for potentially problematic overtones/interpretations, and that all works are political or indicative of some deep-seated core value, there will always be a disconnect between these two groups. The trick is to be able to approach each other respectfully and attempt to understand the other's point of view rather than simply attack, which happens far too often, especially when kink becomes involved, which is also the case with this pairing. Hartwin has a decent amount of kink, not just BDSM, which you can find anywhere, but also daddy kink. Now, daddy kink can be found in pretty much any fandom, but it can be seen in larger quantities here, most likely due to the age gap. A kink in this context is a mental or physical peculiarity, eccentricity, or quirk, a whim. But for this specific context, we must also add usually in a sexual situation. Daddy kink is the finding of arousal in the use of the parental moniker daddy, not from an incestuous point of view, but rather from one of the authority/control typically conveyed by the stereotypical roles assigned to the title. There's a lot more to say about it, but we'd be here a long time. Suffice it to say, kinks are usually a little side-eyed, and many find them odd, and spend an inordinate amount of time trying to assign deep psychological backstories and trails to them, particularly in ones that verge on any form of BDSM or desire to wield/relinquish control. Couple that with some people's problems with the age gap, and you have a group who look on this pairing none too favorably. Sometimes people's kinks are linked to some deep-seated part of their past that implies trauma and heartache, which do need to be examined, and sometimes they're not. There is no clear rule, which is part of what makes the practical application of internet psychology so difficult, as it must work on generalizations and usually people who have just read one or two articles. As a result, in some cases this can end up shaming people for things that are ultimately not that deep, or if they are, really need to be assessed by a professional. Basically, if in the tags you see spanking or feet kink or any other variety and it doesn't appeal to you and you don't understand it and don't want to, click away. That's what tags are there for. Tags are your friend. However, Hartwin shippers for the most part are not setting out to pervert/spread problematic relationship values to the world. Instead, most are working through a pairing they thoroughly enjoy and believe comes from a loving place of equality. The truth is, it's just as easy to overanalyze something as it is to underanalyze it. Like all ships, there are many ways to enjoy this pairing, and if the age gap doesn't squick you out, if you age Eggsy up, well, it's pretty easy to see why people would ship these two. As much as people love to ship rivals, they also love to ship partners. Basically, people just love to ship. There is also, of course, a community of those dedicated to genfics about these two, preferring the actual parental angle and keeping the sex out of it. However, most of the shipping community tends towards a sexual or at least romantic angle, which is a discussion for another day. Hartwin is one of those pairings that dominates its fandom, similar to Arthur and Eames from Inception, so if it really bothers you, there's not a lot of the other pairings within this fandom to cling on to, so it may be best to stay away. However, for those who love this ship and feel it is an example of a slow build and well-established trust that neither character would betray or use to their advantage, there is plenty out there. And of course, there are always dark fics that explore the more negative implications of such a relationship, which can be interesting in their own right. As always, ship and let's ship, and share all your opinions down below. Were you a fan of the Kingsman? Why or why not? Share your thoughts down there. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more videos, and as always, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.